Lieutenant Colonel Daniel Davis reacted to the video in this tweet. He said it exposes Russian troops as shockingly deficient on basic combat fundamentals. He adds that the Russians are not a threat to invade any NATO country. Lieutenant Colonel Davis joining us now. I'd like to take that as a bit of good news because I think we could all use it, Colonel. I guess my question for you, did many overestimate Russia and underestimate Ukraine at this point in the battle?
Without question, they have. And I have to put myself in that category. I expected the Russian capability to be much higher than it was. And I thought that the Ukraine capacity would be less good than it was. I didn't ever question their patriotism or valor, but they have shown themselves to be much better capable than really they should have been, given their history and capabilities. However, the fact that the Russians aren't as good as what we thought, they still have an advantage over the Ukrainians, not the least of which is because for all of these casualties that the Russians have had, they have reinforcements, they have replacements, whereas the Ukrainians, when they lose their combat forces, and especially that one Leland just showed there in the far east that could potentially be completely cut off, those can't be replaced. It doesn't matter how many volunteers you have, they're not trained military people that have the ability to conduct coordinated, organized counterattacks. And so as time continues to go on, even with these grave missteps, and that one you're showing with the tanks that are being hit was just shocking to me as a former armor officer who myself has fought in armored combat. I didn't even see that bad stuff from the Iraqis in the Desert Storm. So that was a pretty shocking, poor performance. But it's still, I keep saying, the number of forces that they have, it does appear they're starting to learn from some of their mistakes, and the overwhelming power continues to really press against the Ukrainian defenses. So I'm just not sure that they can hold out over the long term.
Right. And as Leland pointed out, the Russian convoy is now in firing position. I want to listen to what State Department spokesperson Ned Price said about Putin's invasion, and then we'll talk about it.
Putin's military plan to quickly capture Ukraine, it is clear now, has failed. So he's now turning to a strategy of laying waste to population centers to try to break the will of the people of Ukraine.
Is the bloodiest part of this battle yet to come?
Most likely it is. I wouldn't characterize this as that they have failed. I mean, I know we'd like to say that, but it just didn't work the way they wanted to. But we also kind of got to keep things in perspective. The war has been going on for 2 weeks, so it's in its infancy. So it's got a long way to go, and Russia still has a lot of combat power to bring to bear. But I think this is probably what you're seeing from the comment that Putin made to Macron about 4 or 5 days ago when he came out with an ashen face and said, "I fear the worst is yet to come." I think we're starting to see some of that because, look, Russia doesn't have enough troops to just invest all of these cities, whether it's Kharkov, Sumy, Mariupol, Odessa, and then to come to Kiev. They don't have enough troops for that. So they have to compensate with overwhelming combat power and just sheer weight of missiles and rockets and air power. And it looks like they're starting to do that. So the further they get up there, it looks to me like they're probably going to hit the cities much, much harder, and then only going with troops after they've destroyed much of the cities and the various places are going. And so, yeah, I'm afraid that I do fear it could get a lot worse.
Interestingly, though, the question is what's preventing Russian forces from releasing the weight fully of its air force? Some have speculated that maybe they're not quite as capable as many thought in the air.
That's possible, but they have been, especially in the last week, they have started making substantially greater use of it in the tactical areas in the south and in the east. They've been doing a lot more coordinated events or activities. They still have not used it much in the Kiev, and I don't know if that's because they're afraid because maybe there's still some anti-aircraft capabilities up there from the Ukrainian forces, or the more scary prospect is that they're waiting to hit with all of their power when they get their troops up from either the east or from the South Andes. Because if they bring all of them up there, it's just hard to see how the Ukrainians can hold out too much longer.
There is a real fear, as you know, about what Putin may do on the global stage. White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki addressing that threat today. Let's listen.
What our assessment is based on is how to prevent a world war here, Peter, which is a significant weight that the intelligence community, the Defense Department, and the President of the United States weighs at every moment in time.
So the threat of World War III here. Putin has said the West should not cross his red line. He said that recently, or it could lead to a nuclear war. What do you think that his red line is, or does he have one?
Yeah, well, he definitely has one. And the part of the scary thing is it's only known to him for sure. He's kind of vague about what it is, but he has been specified on a few things. Number one is this whole discussion with the MiGs out of Poland. That was one of them, because he said if any aircraft take off from any other country, and I'm sure he had Poland in mind, he said we will consider them that'll be an act of war, and they will become a party to the war, and we will respond as such and destroy their airfields. That's the reason why Poland said, you know what, actually, we're not going to fly those in from our area. We'll send them to Ramstein. And the reason why the U.S. said, yeah, we're not going to do that either. We're not just going to basically beg or bait Putin to see if he's going to actually make good on that and hit Ramstein Air Base, which, of course, now then it's outside the border, and it's a possibility of a whole regional war. And I do agree that we have to avoid that escalation at all costs. As bad as it's been so far, and as bad as it may yet be in Kiev, we simply can't have that expand into like Warsaw or into Berlin or anywhere else in Western Europe, because then it could expand into a nuclear exchange. And God forbid that could happen, because it could be really dark.
Thanks for watching. Click the red subscribe button below so you can get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.